Hello and welcome to the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network Forging Networks Finding Solutions 3-part webinar series. My name is Jeremiah Asher and I'll be your host for the 3 webinars, and we'll also be presenting on today's topic, improving ecological health in your community using the EcoScore framework. For a little information about myself, I have a background in natural resource management. I'm the Director of Information and Decision Support Technology at the Institute of Water Research at Michigan State University, and oversee the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network project. Before I get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items for the discussion. I think at the bottom of the screen you'll see a questions and answers box. It may be in different locations for some of you, but I think most people are at the bottom of the screen. You can type in questions at any point during the presentation, and we will answer those toward the end. So I'd like to get started and talk about the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network ahead of the Ecological Scorecard. So the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network is essentially an umbrella over a number of different subcategories within the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. And the Ecological Scorecard is one of those that we'll be talking about today. Great Lakes Clean Communities Network was funded by the Great Lakes Protection Fund, and it really was a website platform that was developed to connect leaders and environmental practitioners together with each other so that they could work together to do better work than they could do individually. It's a place where communities, organizations, individuals can get together and share information about tools and ideas and techniques that they're using to improve the overall health of the Great Lakes. So this is just a geographic distribution of the members of the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. So you can see there's a number of individuals around the Great Lakes basin who are participating, some in stronger clusters than other areas. But we have nearly 300 members right now that are part of the network, and we have that number is increasing monthly for us. Also want to mention a number of our partners who were very instrumental in helping us to develop the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network project. They've participated in a number of different activities. Some helped support the development of the EcoScore card. Some helped develop the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. We're helping connect us with different partners and organizations that helped test and develop the system. And without their help, we wouldn't be able to put the system that we have together today. So just like to thank them. This is the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network website, and we have 4 action items that are focused within the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network site. So we have actions around connecting people together. We have actions around sharing information and tools, calculators, and other things. We have a tools section where people can access a variety of different tools to help them address environmental issues that are of concern in their area. And then we have an ecological scorecard where people can keep track of their ecological benefits. And that's the one that we'll be talking about today, is the EcoScorecard. So first, let's just talk a little bit about the benefits of having the EcoScorecard or using it. So one of the major benefits is it provides a framework to evaluate and track progress through indicators. So we worked with the Nature Conservancy to develop 12 different indicators that are used to track progress. And working with a number of communities, this seemed to be one of the important features about the ecological scorecard that they liked, is that a number of communities may not have had a sustainability plan developed, or they may have been working from a master plan. And this, the framework that we established was an easy way for them to take information about certain indicators and include that into their master plans that they didn't have any sort of particular indicators or plans set up to address particular issues around environmental health. Another one is we have a way to help visualize those improvements over time. So through a dashboard, you can quickly get in and visualize the impacts that have taken place based off of the changes that are going in at your community. Also enhances communication. So also a number of communities have indicated to us that it was very helpful for them in the process of completing the ecological scorecard, that it required them to reach out and connect with different municipalities in their area or watershed groups, conservation groups, to help answer some of the questions that were in that scorecard. And they thought that that by itself was very beneficial for them to help understand what was going on in their area or their watershed. And then we provide an easy method to report progress out to stakeholders. And again, this is just kind of an added benefit that we tried to provide so that it was easy to share the different types of works and activities that communities were doing with the folks that are important to them, such as citizens and advisory board members. Now, I talk about communities kind of in a general term throughout this, so you'll hear me mention that. And when I'm referring to communities, I kind of look at that as an umbrella statement for municipalities, watershed groups, planning commissions, and conservation groups. These are all the different types of groups that have used the EcoScore card and that we intended as our target audience. So again, you'll hear me mention communities, and I'll be using that as kind of a general term. So initially, we developed the scorecard to summarize improvements in the Great Lakes Basin, and this was related back to the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. So we had the network in place, and we're trying to figure out, some different ways that we could report environmental or ecological benefits from that network, which it can be a difficult thing to do. So one of the ways that we came up to do that was to use this ecological scorecard, so that as people learned different things from the network, interacted with people, got access to different tools, and implemented different plans in their community, they could take a baseline score and they could repeat those scores over time and do different evaluations and track their progress, and then we'd be able to report that back out for the impacts, one of the ways that the system was impacting the Great Lakes. But it also provided communities with a way to benchmark and track progress toward ecological health. And we'll walk through that and look at that in a little bit more detail here. So as I mentioned, we worked closely with the Nature Conservancy in developing this. We reviewed 40 different existing scorecards, which there are a lot of scorecards out there. And we looked at a number of partner planning documents and scientific literature to help inform us about what type of indicators and metrics that we wanted to use to be able to track ecological health in a community, and look at what others were doing to do that. We also wanted to help inform what were the goals and outcomes that we were trying to achieve. And we needed to know basically what we were working toward. Was there enough scientific supported standards to help us achieve those, and establish some targets to make sure that we were doing enough of what we needed to do. And then also see what kind of conservation activities were available. So what kind of programs did communities have in place that could help them reach the outcomes and goals that were being set up by the scorecard, and to be able to help them increase their score over time. And so I think, came up with about 50 or 60 different indicators as our first cut. And working with our partnering communities, we refined that through a process of meetings and got that down to basically 12 different indicators that were divided into land and water categories. And here's just kind of a list of those 12 different indicators, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. But urban tree canopy coverages, impervious surfaces, green infrastructure, healthy rivers and streams, nitrogen and phosphorus levels. And these are just a few of the ones that were identified through our process as being achievable and relevant to the communities that would use those. So we're tracking progress in a number of different ways. We track it, one, through a scoring system using points, and then we also use monitoring results to help us track track progress. And what this does, it really gives us a flexible framework to acknowledge short-term improvements and also to address long-term goals. So the scoring framework looks a little bit like this. We basically have 4 categories under planning, programs, monitoring, and results. And so what we're looking at is, does a community have plans in place to address a particular indicator? Do they have programs set up to support those plans? Are they doing monitoring related to those programs? And are they collecting the results over time? And if a community is not doing these basic pieces of information or basic framework, it's really difficult to be able to move the needle in any sort of ecological improvement there. So the scoring that is used for that framework looks like this. There are 12 indicators, and each indicator is worth 12 points. So you have 2 points for planning, 2 points for programs, 2 points for monitoring, and 6 points for collecting results. And what this does is this really helps us focus on the short-term pieces of improvement. So for example, if we're looking at phosphorus levels in streams and there aren't any plans in place to address those, and there's no programs currently available or that are currently being implemented, it's going to be difficult to make much progress. But if we get some plans in place and we set up some programs, start doing some monitoring, then we can show through the dashboard that we're actually making improvements, short-term improvements toward that particular indicator. And then there are long-term improvements or goals that we're looking at for establishing specific targets. And those are the things that take longer to get to, but at least we can start showing that we're actually having some progress toward making an improvement. So if we look at the longer term ones, these are established through science-based targets, and they're set up to really help us track the long-term progress toward a goal. And the examples of these might include, for a tree canopy coverage, trying to achieve 40% tree canopy coverage in the total area of the community. Or for impervious surfaces, looking at trying to get at 30% of the impervious total impervious surfaces not being greater than 30%. So these are those specific targets that we're trying to achieve. And so we might make short-term progress in improving the plans or the framework set up to address those, and then still continue to work at improving the actual long-term goal for those. So if we take a minute now and look at what the scorecard actually looks like. If you log on to the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network website, you'll go in and as I showed on that front screen, you'll click the EcoScore, and that'll bring you over to this area here. This gives you a little bit of information about what the scorecard is and how it works and the goals established with it. And if you were to go and click Next, it'll bring you to the next section. Also, there's some information up here for workbooks and so forth that I'll get into a little bit more later on. But it'll take you to this next section, which will ask you about what you'd like to do for your evaluation. If this is a new evaluation or an existing evaluation. And so at any point you can, if you create this, you can come back into the system and work on one that you've already started. You don't have to work through it all at one shot. And oftentimes you'll have to collect information from other areas outside of your organization. And so it may be a process where you come back and forth to it at different times. But for this example, we'll talk about creating a new evaluation. And that'll open you up into this screen, and you can provide a few details about this particular evaluation. You can give it a name. We recommend indicating, like a number 1 or putting a date in here to help you keep track of those evaluations over time. And then put in a description about this one. And if it's your first time doing the evaluation, we recommend selecting this baseline evaluation. And basically what this does is tell the system that this is the first time we're doing an evaluation. We want to keep track of improvements or changes from this point moving forward. And then here are the 12 different indicators. And by default, a community is evaluated on all 12 indicators, but we know that in some cases the indicators might not all be applicable to a group. So they can go in and specify by clicking on these which of those indicators may not be applicable. So they may not have combined sewer overflows as a issue, so we don't want to negatively score them on that. So they can select that one, and then they won't be evaluated based off of that indicator. And you click next and save. That'll take you on to the next screen. This asks some general information about the size of the community, so that for benchmarking purposes you can be compared to some similar sort of groups. It's asked if it's the first time that the scorecard is being completed. Ask for its zip code and the land area, and then the population of the community. Again, you click next and save. You'll move on. So for each one of the indicators, it'll walk us through and provide a rationale about why that indicator is important up here. In this case, it talks about, we're looking at the urban tree canopy coverage as expressed as a percent of the community's total land area, and that increasing this offers a variety of ecological benefits, including climate cooling, enhanced wildlife habitat, increased soil moisture retention, and therefore healthier, greener spaces. And then in each one of these, we also provide literature for publications and others that were supporting the rationale behind establishing certain targets and goals and what went into those. Then we typically have these 4 questions trying to get at the planning, programs, monitoring, and results for each one of those indicators as mentioned before. So does your sustainability plan or master plan address urban tree canopy coverage? You answer that. Are there programs available? And you can select which programs, if any, are applicable. Is your community monitoring urban tree canopy coverage through an assessment program like iTree or urban forest program? And then what is the percent observed level of tree canopy coverage for the area? And then you can provide that and continue to hit next and save. So you can leave these blank if you don't know the answer, and you can come back and answer them at any time. Then you can continue to do next and save through that till you'll get to the end, and you'll get a verbal pat on the back that you completed the scorecard. And there's a couple options. So you can go back in and answer additional questions if you want. You can view a report, or you can view the Eco Dashboard. And so we'll talk about this Eco Dashboard at this moment here. So when you click on that, what it does is brings you up to the dashboard summary. So this summary was created as a way to visualize the answers that have been provided in the previous sections. So in this case, there are 144 total points because we selected to be evaluated on all 12 indicators. So 12 indicators with 12 points possible. And on this one, it shows what our total score is compared to what our goal is. We also have this, what we're calling our focus indicator. So the system automatically keeps track of the indicators that are scoring the worst or the lowest, and it will flag those by bringing them up to your attention to say that maybe some more time should be spent on this particular indicator to bring it up to speed with some of the others. We also have overall land and water scores that are available, and those are put together on a graph here. Excuse me. And we'll, for each of this summarizes all of the 6 land indicators, and this summarizes all the 6 water indicators. And then if you scroll down, there's additional indicators, which I'll show later on in the presentation for each one of those individual indicators. So if we take a closer look at what goes into these graphs, kind of dissect this and look at each one of the aspects of it. So the point system here is 12 out of 12 points for this one. And so it shows you that you've basically gotten all the points that are available. You're doing planning, you have programs established, you're monitoring, and you're collecting results. And so that shows that score, and you can see that visually in this graph here. So we basically created a narrative about fair, good, or excellent, trying to illustrate what the that number format is. So here you can see the needle is all the way over to a 12, and then what we can also see is this average dotted line here, which is telling us what other communities similar size are scoring on that particular indicator. So that gives us a way to benchmark what's going on there. So we can move on to the next section, which is the regional average, which again is basically just giving a number illustration. 4 out of 12 is what most communities are scoring on this particular one. And then we have a trend graph. So each time that you do an evaluation, it keeps track of that, and this line will kind of change dynamically over time. So in some cases, you'll see that some indicators that don't have much change will just be a flat line for a while, or they might take off and start doing well and then start to slow down. So it's just, again, another way to visualize what your progress is on that particular indicator. We have a description at the bottom of each one talking about, in this case, that tree canopies provide the ecological benefits of, like I mentioned before, climate cooling and enhanced wildlife habitat, soil moisture retention, and that communities should strive for 40% tree cover canopy as an achievable and desirable target. So the system then allows us to be able to go in and look at where are we toward this target. So our target's 40%, and we've reported here that we're at 30%. So even though, again, we have all the framework in place, so we're doing all the right things in the short term with our planning and programs, we still might not be reaching our long-term goal of getting to 40%. So we can continue to strive toward attaining that 40% goal there. So if we look at the next section, we're going to go into the view a report. And viewing a report, this is a way, again, that you can share the information with your stakeholders about the activities that you have been doing as far as improving ecological health in your community. So this report is automatically generated. It is developed initially in a web browser, so it'll pull this up and you can customize it right in the web browser, change the title, add some information about the community and who conducted the evaluation. And then for each one of the pages, it provides, for each one of the indicators, it provides a page that has, again, the description about why that indicator is important. Why do we care about it? What does it do for our community? How does it improve ecological health? And what are the targets that are set up there? Why are they set up? Who came up with them? And then it goes down and gives a regional community average. Again, provides the narrative about what is a community average, where does that information come from. And so basically, just to give a little background on that, is every time that people go in and conduct EcoScore evaluations, their evaluations are summarized in the background and then reported out here. You can't see, what communities are there doing those scorecards, but you can keep track of how you're scoring against those other similar sized communities. And then at the bottom, we have a breakout of your actual score showing the points that you have, the target indicator and how you're progressing toward that target, and then also what your improvements have been over time. Now, a number of groups that we work with have mentioned that, they would like to be able to share some of this, but maybe not all of it. So they might be doing good in green infrastructure and combined sewer overflow events, and not so well in others. So they may want to go in and pull some of the pages out of this and just share the parts that they've been doing well with, which is absolutely fine, and we're okay with doing that. So we made it in a way that's easy to do that. When you save this as or print it out as a PDF on your computer, you can go in and then select those pages that you want to share if you're not interested in sharing everything with citizens or other groups. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want to provide. But again, it's just an easy way to be able to share the activities that have been going on and summarize those, so it doesn't require any additional writing on your part. Nobody, I will mention that nobody else can see your report unless you decide to share that with them. So everything is based off the login. Once you've logged into the system, only your information is available to you, and you can choose if you want to share that link or pass it along. We also have a complimentary companion document, our workbook that we use. It's the EcoScore workbook, and what this workbook does is it works as a way to kind of help you through the process of conducting an EcoScore. So it provides greater detail about the indicators that were chosen. It talks about the groups that worked with us on developing that. It goes through and lists out all the different indicator targets and what those targets are for each of those 12 different indicators. And then it goes in and looks at the process that should be used in conducting your first evaluation. And so we look at these a little more detail here. First process is gathering team and data and documentation. And in this workbook, there is a list of all the different questions that are to be asked. And so you can take that list and identify up front what questions you can ask or answer, and then who you might need to talk to in neighboring communities or watershed groups or other organizations that can help you answer those questions. And then you can take that document with you to help keep track of providing those. The next part is assessing or filling out the EcoScore on the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. So after you've done that preparation and gather data, you can start to input that into the system. Then you'll go through and hit the review process where you're examining the results and determining areas of improvement. And then you'll want to go in and respond to those or take actions to improve those scores in those different areas. And then ultimately, as your score continues to improve, we'd like to be able to recognize different communities on the work that they've done. And so we have a recognition program. It's called the Great Lakes Clean Community Designation. And so for those communities who have achieved all of the available points, so they don't have to necessarily meet all of the target goals, because those are, again, going to be longer term goals, but if they have all the framework in place, all the plans and programs and monitoring, and they're collecting results for those 12 indicators, or if there may only be 6 indicators depending on their particular community, then they can receive a Great Lakes Clean Community Designation sign over here that they can hang outside of the community. And then they'll also get recognized through the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. We'll share that information also on the Great Lakes Information Network, and then through a variety of our different social media outlets to basically just help recognize that community and taking steps to improve ecological health there. I will also mention that we don't consider this a final version of the scorecard. So we would like to, we kind of see this as version 1, and we're in the process now of trying to work with a number of different folks to reevaluate and see what sort of changes could enhance the current version of the EcoScorecard. Do we provide some options that users can customize their own indicators and add those into the list? And so there's a number of different things that we would like to look at. And so if you are interested in participating in that, at the survey at the end, you can indicate that if you'd like to be contacted, and then we could follow up with you to have you participate in that process. So we have a couple minutes here. I'm going to go, if we can hold on, I'm going to switch over, and I'm actually going to go to the website and just show a couple different features on the site that we showed screenshots for. So you should have the Ecological Scorecard website you should be seeing here. And again, you can download the PDF workbook here that the companion document you can follow with. And once you get here, it tells you some information about the scorecard. If you click next, it takes you into this evaluation one. You can click on work on an existing evaluation. And here in this demonstration, I have 3 evaluations that I've done. And we recommend, either viewing these on a yearly basis or maybe every 6 months, depending on how your organization's set up. But that first one that I did, where I indicated it was a baseline evaluation, the system just makes a little star next to it. So the other ones are additional evaluations I've done. So these could be, a year apart from each other. So you did your first one, and then a year later you did another one, and then a year later you did another one, or every 6 months. And so you can go back into any of those and work on those specific ones. But what I'm going to show you is the process of doing a new one. So we'll create a new evaluation, and it brings us back to this form here where we populate information. But we don't want to. We've already done 3 of them. So we don't want to have to re-enter all of our information again. So there's an option here where you can say, import data from a previous evaluation. So if you click that, it'll bring up the previous evaluations, and we'll just say we want to load in evaluation number 3. It'll indicate here that we've loaded that up successfully. And we can go in and we can say, okay, this is going to be evaluation 4 now for us. And we'll continue to hit next and save. Nothing's changed here about our general information. We'll hit next and save. And let's just say we know that there's one particular thing that we've been interested in working on, and so we don't want to click all the way through these. We just want to go in and make a change on our healthy rivers and streams. So our healthy rivers and streams, let me go back here real quick to the dashboard. And if you were to go back into a previous evaluation, you'll see the score is changing, and also this focus indicator will change. So as you make different improvements, that focus indicator that might be the lowest will be different from time to time, and so it'll help you keep an eye on that one. But again, here's the overall progress that's being made on the land indicator, and the overall progress that's being made on the water indicator showing your scores. And then if we come down here, we can look at each one of the different indicators and how we're scoring on those. And the healthy rivers and stream one here, we say, oh, we've been making progress on a number of those, but we haven't really made a whole lot of change in the healthy rivers and streams, and so that's the one we want to go to. So if we go back here, we can skip around anywhere we want in this process. And if you just hover over these, it'll tell you which indicator it is. So if we want to go to the healthy rivers and streams, we can just go and click over to that one. It'll take us directly to that question. And we can look at, do we have any program or plan set up for this? And so previously we didn't. We said, yes, we've just recently established a plan. We're using Michigan Clean Water Corps volunteers, and we actually have a budget set aside. I'm just giving some examples here. We may or may not. And we've done our first evaluation now, and we scored a 40% off of the criteria numbers that were available through that particular monitoring program that we were using. We'll click next and save that. And if we go back into the dashboard, we should be able to see that we actually have 12. Since we answered all those points, we have 12 out of 12 for that, and that our status is 40%, but we're actually trying to get to 70%. And that across the region, most people are scoring about 3 out of 12 on this particular indicator. So you can see those through any of these different indicator layouts here. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back. again, the report here, something you can go to load up the report, and this is where you can go in and modify different information about this report, and it walks you through the process. And then you can print that using your print function. You can do a print as PDF. So I'm going to come right back over here real quick, back to where our presentation was. I will mention that we talked today mostly about the ecological scorecard and how you can use that as a framework to help improve ecological health in your community. There are a number of different other aspects about the Great Lakes Clean Communities Networks, as I mentioned before, and we'll be talking about those in upcoming webinars. So we have a webinar series coming up called Using Social Media to Make Greater Impacts in Your Community. That's December 16th. Again, these are all at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have another one, Cliff Lampy from the University of Michigan will be the presenter on that. And then we have another one coming up called Improving Collaboration Using the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. Laura Young will be the presenter on that on January 11th. And we also have the New York State Department who will be talking about a case study about how they're using the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network to share information and strengthen their existing programs and be able to communicate with coastal communities in their area. And so that'll be again January 11th. I provided a couple links here. This is a link to the website. We encourage you to go and look at a promotional video link that we have here that basically talks with a few individuals who've used the EcoScore card and talks about how they've used it and what they've found beneficial about that. And then we also have a survey link that we also encourage you to provide some feedback to us about this particular presentation. So with that, I'm going to open it up to Lois and Laura to answer some questions or ask questions that the audience has provided.
Thanks, Jeremiah. The first question we have is, why are air indicators not included in the scorecard?
Initially, we didn't include air indicators. They were on the first cut, but I think because communities felt that they might be negatively scored for something that was harder for them to control. So if they were downwind or had something that was outside of their control, they didn't want to be scored negatively for that. So on our first version, those got kind of voted out as an option to include in there.
All right, thanks for that. And the second question we have is, can this be used with Canadian postal codes as opposed to zip codes for the regional comparisons?
Yes, you can enter any information code-wise that you want into that, and we could aggregate that information for Canadian provinces as well.
All right, folks, are there any, oh, I see we have another one. What if your community does not have a budget for in-river monitoring or invasive species control, but you have organizations that monitor those indicators within your community? Can that count as fulfilling that requirement?
Yes, so a lot of what we see in doing this is that a municipality might not be the particular place to move this forward. So they might have some interest in it, but they often don't have the staff or resources to be able to do that. But they live in a community or a group or a watershed that has a conservancy in it, or a watershed group that does have the expertise, that does have the incentive and the desire to be able to do these sort of activities. And so they'll often work with the municipality, or maybe take the lead on developing the score. And so in a number of cases, if there's an umbrella program or monitoring that somebody else is doing, you can indicate that is part of the scorecard that you are completing, and that can count for that.
All right. The next one we have here is a technical question, so we'll try to assist you with that in just a moment. Another question we have is, can you mention that some communities have used the workbook and the EcoScore card as a framework to create sustainability, watershed, and resiliency plans?
Can you unfold that one again?
This is from Ken. He just says, can you mention that some communities have used the workbook and the EcoScore card as a framework to create sustainability, watershed, and resiliency plans?
Yes, and that's a good point. We worked with a number of groups that have been able to help develop their own plans based off of the indicators that were used, and also the process and framework that was developed through the companion workbook that was provided, and that to them, that they felt that was a very valuable piece to help them get started there, because they weren't really sure. They were interested in the topic, but didn't really have the resources or know how to get to that particular place, so that they found those very helpful.
All right. If there are any other questions, please feel free to type those in. And for the viewer who said you weren't able to access or click on the bubbles in the survey, we'll try to look into that and make sure you're able to finish that up.
So is that we good with the questions there?
Going once, twice. I think we've wrapped them up.
Okay.
Oh wait, nope, there's one more. Is there a geographic scale limitation?
There is not a geographic scale limitation. So it was initially set up as to support the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network, which is looking at the Great Lakes Basin, but there is no limitation, to being able to geographically to be able to enter something outside of the basin.
Do we have any other questions?
Okay.
All right, we have one more. Can the background algorithms be downloaded to allow for additional customization?
Not at the moment, although it could be a possibility. So we don't have anything set up at the time. We are in the process of playing with an API that could aggregate some information and be able to share that with others, but we don't have that completed at this time.
All right, and it looks like the survey is working for that user, so that's good to hear. Are there any other questions? And I'll just mention, if you think of something after the webinar, feel free to contact Jeremiah, and we'll get those answered.
All right. Well, that concludes the presentation that we have. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. We'll be sending up a follow-up email with some links to promotional videos, the website, recording of the presentation, and as Laura mentioned, a short survey. Hope you'll be able to join us in the following weeks to learn more about using social media to make a greater impact in your community and improving collaboration using the Great Lakes Clean Communities Network. We hope you have a great day and look forward to seeing you at our upcoming webinars.
I stopped the recording.